He kissed me goodbye like it was any other morning. But something in the silence told me I'd already lost him. Chris had planned this hiking trip for weeks, a solo journey through the Pacific Northwest. To disconnect, he said, to reset. He talked about it like therapy, like a pilgrimage. I wanted to be supportive. I even helped him pack, folded his flannels, labeled his protein bars, stuffed his socks with notes like we were still in the honeymoon phase. But that morning, something was off. It wasn't what he said. It was what he didn't say. No, I'll miss you. No, wish you were coming. Just a distracted kiss and a quick, see you Sunday. He barely looked back. Still, I told myself I was overthinking. I'd done that before. Too many times, actually. He always said I had a creative brain, like that was a flaw. Like suspicion was just part of being artistic, emotional. But deep down, I knew the difference between intuition and paranoia. This was intuition. He took the GoPro I bought him last Christmas, the one he almost never used. Said he'd try to document the views. It felt performative, but I didn't. Push. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe this was just a man craving solitude. Avery, my sister, was the only one who saw the crack in my smile. You really trust him out there alone? She asked. I nodded too quickly. She raised an eyebrow. That's not an answer, Jen. That's a hope. She always saw through me. It annoyed me. Until later, when I wished I'd listened. The weekend passed slowly. My phone stayed quiet. No texts. No, look at this view photos. Nothing. I told myself it was part of the plan. Solo meant solo. But the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt rehearsed. When Chris came back Sunday night, he looked untouched. Not sunburnt, not tired. Just showered, fresh, oddly energized. He dropped his bag, kissed my cheek, and said, "Miss me." I smiled, but inside, something split. He talked about trail paths, elevation, campfires. He even pulled out the GoPro and said, "Didn't get much, but I'll upload the footage for you." I nodded, heart racing. I didn't know why I was so afraid. When he fell asleep, I took the SD card from the GoPro, locked myself in the office, plugged it in, and waited. Because something in my bones told me this wasn't just about trees and mountains. It was about who was with him in the frame. Chris wasn't always distant. Or maybe he was. But in the beginning, I called it mystery. We met on a group camping trip organized by mutual friends. He was the guy with the map and the headlamp. Confident, but quiet. He helped me set up my tent when I struggled. Told me I had storm eyes, intense, unpredictable, beautiful. I fell fast, hard. He had this way of making the world feel less chaotic. I was all emotion, high tides, and Chris was the stone. Grounded, unshakable. I mistook his steadiness for safety. I thought I was lucky. Our early days were full of what I now realize were curated experiences. Road trips, sunrise hikes, playlists with songs that made me feel chosen. He said I was the kind of girl who makes a man believe in forever. I wrote that in my journal, doodled hearts around it. When he proposed, it wasn't with a ring, but with a compass. "So we never lose each other," he said. I thought it was poetic. I said yes. It wasn't until later that I understood. Compasses don't prevent you from getting lost. They just show you the direction once you're already wandering. Marriage didn't start bad. It started quiet, routine. He'd make breakfast. I'd fold his laundry. We'd trade memes and kiss on the forehead like best friends. But slowly, the space between us widened. He said I was too sensitive. I said he was too detached. We argued. About connection. About presence. He always won. Not with volume, but with logic. I'd cry. He'd stare and say, "Let's not escalate this." He didn't yell. He dismissed. And somehow that felt worse. I told myself it was just a phase. That marriages go through seasons, that we'd find our way back. But the more I tried, the further he pulled away. I planned weekend getaways. He said he needed space. I scheduled date nights. He said he was exhausted. Then came Sophie. He mentioned her casually. She's new at work, super organized, really helpful. I nodded. Tried not to let my stomach flip. Tried not to hear the extra in his tone when he said her name. I brought it up once. He rolled his eyes. "You're really going to start this?" he asked. "She has a boyfriend." He made me feel ridiculous, jealous, petty. And I believed him. Because love makes you believe the person hurting you just doesn't know they are. Looking back, I see it now. The slow erosion. The gaslighting wrapped in charm. The way he built a world where doubting him felt like betrayal. And still, I loved him. Because the girl I used to be thought that if someone stayed, it meant they cared. She didn't know that some people stay just to keep control. After Sophie showed up, things didn't change overnight. They changed like rust. Slowly. Quietly. Until the structure underneath began to rot. Chris started staying later at work. "She's just more efficient when it's quiet," he'd say. When I asked why he had to be there too, he shrugged. "She's new. I'm mentoring her." The first time I pushed harder, he tilted his head and said, "Why are you so insecure lately?" That word, insecure, became his shield. I couldn't express discomfort without it being traced back to me. My trauma, my past, my overactive imagination. He didn't defend Sophie. He dismissed me. He began picking fights about nothing, the dishes, my tone, how I always assume the worst. And after every argument, he'd pull away just enough to make me chase him, apologize, rebuild what I didn't break. One night, I found a bracelet in his car, dainty, silver, definitely not mine. He said it was Sophie's. She dropped it, and he forgot to return it. I asked why it was in the glove compartment. He said I was being dramatic. "It's just a bracelet, Jenna," I told Avery. She said, "You know what this is." I didn't respond, because admitting it would make it real, and I wasn't ready, not then. Chris started going off-grid on weekends. Random hikes, long drives, tech-free escapes. He framed them as self-care. Said he needed solitude to hear himself think. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe it. But the truth was, he only needed space from accountability. Every time I tried to get close, he'd say things like, "You don't trust me," and that would shut me down. Because I did. Or I thought I did. Or maybe I just wanted to. He began weaponizing my kindness, saying things like, "Most wives would be proud of how independent I am." Or, "You should be grateful I'm not like other men." I swallowed those lines like poison disguised as compliments. When I suggested going hiking together, he said, "You'd slow me down." When I asked to come see his favorite trail, he said, "It's my thing." I stopped asking. I started shrinking. The GoPro was supposed to be a gesture of love, something to keep him safe, to keep him connected. But now I realized I wasn't keeping him safe. I was giving him a prop for the illusion. He was building a narrative. And I was the woman on the outside of the frame, always watching, never invited in. And the more I questioned it, the more he said I was imagining things. But what he didn't know was that I was done imagining. I was about to start seeing. The footage started like any typical hike: boots crunching gravel, the hum of wind, the occasional bird call. At first, I watched through a detached lens, looking for beauty, for meaning, for proof that I was wrong. Then I saw her. It was a brief moment. Just a flash of movement as the GoPro shifted, but it was unmistakable, a hand reaching for his. Delicate fingers. A gold ring with a tiny opal. Sophie's ring. I'd seen it before at a holiday party. She said it was a family heirloom. Paused the video, rewound, played it again, slower, clearer. The camera swung left, and there she was, fully in frame now, walking beside him, laughing. He reached out, laced their fingers, and said, "This is what peace feels like." I couldn't breathe. They weren't lost in the woods. They were wrapped in each other. My hand covered my mouth, like I could keep the scream from escaping. But it wasn't a scream that came. It was something colder, quieter, a complete stillness. Because the moment you realize you've been betrayed isn't always explosive. Sometimes it's surgical. They had hiked together, slept in that tent together, shared coffee from my thermos, wore the socks I packed, and Chris had looked me in the eye and said, "It was just me and the trees." He lied. I smiled, because I finally had what he'd spent months denying me, the truth. I watched the footage until the battery died, watched her reach for his face, watched him whisper her name, watched them create a version of intimacy that had once belonged to us. It was a strange kind of heartbreak, not sharp, not sudden, but slow, like a boat sinking in still water. And the worst part? I had known. Somewhere deep down, I had always known. I sat on the floor for hours, surrounded by images of their little romance, the proof of every gaslight, every denial. Every time he said, "You're just being paranoid," I wasn't paranoid. I was precise. He walked into the kitchen later that night, towel around his neck, fresh from a shower. "Everything okay?" he asked. I looked up, eyes dry, voice steady, and said, "Yeah, I was just watching your hike." He didn't flinch, didn't pause, just nodded like nothing mattered. That was the moment everything changed. Because now, he wasn't hiding a secret. He was living in a lie I no longer had to question. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in our bed, his back turned to me, breathing steady, and wondered how long I'd been sleeping next to a stranger. The rage didn't come fast. It arrived like a slow wave, dragging grief behind it. I wasn't just mourning the cheating. I was mourning every apology I gave when I hadn't done anything wrong. Every night I begged for closeness he was giving to someone else. I wanted to scream. Throw the GoPro at him. Demand answers. But what would he say? It wasn't what it looked like? You always read too much into things? I could already hear the gaslighting echoing in my mind. So I stayed quiet. Still. And I let the grief pour in. I cried in the shower, curled into myself like I could make my body disappear. I remembered packing his trail mix with handwritten notes. "You're my home," one said. The same hand he used to unzip Sophie's jacket was the one I had once held during my father's funeral. I went through stages: heartbreak, fury, disbelief, silence. And in the silence, I started seeing everything clearly. Every deflection. Every time he made me feel unstable for noticing the shift between us. He didn't just betray me, he dismantled me, piece by piece, while pretending to love the scraps. I called Avery. I didn't say much. Just, I was right. Her voice cracked. "You always were, Jen." She didn't say leave him. She knew I needed more than advice. I needed space to choose. Chris went about the week like nothing had happened, made dinner, sent memes, kissed my forehead. and I let him. Because sometimes revenge isn't slamming doors. It's letting someone believe the performance is still working, while you're backstage, setting the whole stage on fire. One night, he asked if I wanted to plan a weekend away. Just us. "We haven't connected in a while," he said. The audacity made my chest ache. He wasn't trying to fix us. He was trying to control the timing of the next lie. I smiled. "Sure, let's do it." And I meant it, just not the way he thought, because I wasn't planning a getaway. I was planning an exit, one he'd never see coming. Once the numbness wore off, I didn't fall apart. I focused. I started piecing together a timeline, not to torture myself, but to understand the architecture of the lie. Dates, messages, the GoPro metadata. I even pulled his shared album backups from the cloud. Photos he didn't think I'd ever see. Blurry selfies, matching thermoses, her reflection in his sunglasses. Every detail was a thread, and I was pulling the whole sweater apart. I found hotel receipts. From weekends said he was camping alone. One was from a boutique inn with a romance package add-on. I checked our credit card statement. He'd used our joint account. He cheated on me with my own money. The rage didn't paralyze me this time. It sharpened me. I took screenshots, filed everything into a folder labeled closure. Not because I needed his admission, but because I needed to reclaim my story. He was still talking to Sophie. I could tell. Not directly, but through the way he'd keep his phone screen down. How he smiled when a notification buzzed. Then pretended it was nothing. One morning, I asked who he was texting. "Work stuff," he mumbled. He lied. I smiled, because by then I had already cloned his phone to my iPad using our Apple ID. A little trick he taught me when he wanted to monitor my screen time for my well-being. His messages to Sophie were filled with the kind of softness I hadn't seen in months. "Miss you already. Last weekend was unreal. Wish I could hold your hand all the way to sleep." My stomach turned, but I kept reading, because this wasn't heartbreak anymore. This was evidence. I started planning my exit in quiet, strategic moves. I opened a new checking account, rerouted my paychecks, contacted a friend at a realty firm and found a sublease with a flexible move-in date. I made copies of all important documents, passport, tax forms, insurance. I wasn't just leaving. I was reclaiming everything. The final piece, the GoPro footage. I edited it into a short, unambiguous clip. The hand-holding, the laughing, the tent zipping shut. The part where he kissed her forehead and said, "She'll never know." I titled it, "The Hike." I uploaded it to a private link, password protected, just in case, because when people like Chris spin stories, they rely on your silence. I wasn't going to be silent anymore. I didn't know exactly when I'd confront him, or if I even needed to. Sometimes the loudest message is the one you never have to deliver face to face. Revenge isn't about destruction, it's about clarity. And clarity, I learned, is best served quietly. I didn't confront Chris. I didn't scream or throw plates or cry in the hallway. I made him breakfast, kissed his cheek, said, "Let's plan that weekend." He smiled, smug and unbothered, and I mirrored it, because he still thought I was his, and that was my power. That Friday, I told him I had a work meeting and would meet him at the cabin we booked. I packed his bag for him, made sure the GoPro was inside. He loved using it now, like he could keep lying through beautiful scenery. He left around noon. I waited 30 minutes, then I clicked the link. At 12:35 p.m., the hike was live. Didn't post it publicly. That would have made it a scandal. I emailed it. To Sophie's boyfriend, to Chris's coworkers, to the friend group that always idolized our marriage. The subject line was simple. In case you thought he was solo. I didn't say a word. No caption, No signature, just the footage, just the truth. By the time I arrived at the cabin that night, alone, my phone had exploded. Missed calls. Voicemails. One from Sophie, sobbing. One from Chris, angry, stammering. "What the hell did you do?" I didn't answer. I poured myself a glass of wine and watched the sunset from the deck. That was the moment everything changed. Not because I exposed him, but because I didn't need his reaction. The revenge wasn't for drama. It was for liberation. He showed up the next day. Drove up like a man ready to beg or rage. I didn't even open the door. I left a note. "I saw whose hand you held. Now let go of mine." He called 30 more times. I didn't pick up. I moved out a week later. Left him with the apartment, the dishes, the GoPro, and the digital trail of every lie. He begged, said it was a mistake, that he got lost. I laughed. "You weren't lost, Chris. You were exactly where you wanted to be." I changed my number. Avery helped me pack. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just said, "Finally," and hugged me like a sister does when she knows how long you've been surviving instead of living. They never expected me to leave like this. But I didn't walk away shattered. I walked away holding the only hand that mattered, my own. The first night in my new apartment, I slept with the windows open. No noise machine. No GoPro battery blinking in the dark. Just air. Silence. And the sound of my own breathing. I thought I'd feel lonely, but I didn't. I felt still. And for the first time in months, still didn't mean stuck. It meant safe. I redecorated with colors he hated. Burnt orange, sage green, deep blue. I lit candles that gave me headaches when we were together, because he said they were too strong. Now I let them burn freely. I breathed it all in. There were nights when grief came back, like muscle memory. I'd roll over expecting to feel his arm, hear him breathing. Then I'd remember. He chose someone else, and I chose myself. That used to feel unequal. Now it feels like power. I didn't block him right away. I wanted him to see, to watch me rebuild in real time. He kept texting, neutral stuff at first. "Hope you're okay." Then more desperate. "Can we talk?" Then angry. I don't deserve this, but I didn't reply, because silence isn't weakness. It's survival. I started sharing parts of my story anonymously in forums, in writing groups. Women messaged me, said, "That was me too." One wrote, "I packed his GoPro too." We were all out here, building each other from the pieces. We were taught to hide. I began hiking again, alone, on my own terms. I took photos not for proof, but for peace. No audience. No one to validate the journey. Just me, a trail, and the sound of my own footfalls. Chris became a ghost, a soft echo in a house I no longer live in. And Sophie? She disappeared too. Maybe from shame, maybe from his lies. I didn't need to know. The footage still sits on my hard drive. Not because I need it, but because I earned it. A visual monument to the moment I stopped questioning my sanity and started trusting my gut. This wasn't heartbreak. It was transformation. And now, when I tell people what happened, I don't say he cheated. I say he held her hand and I let go of his.